how do you grow an organization if the masses, the larger portion, are not continuously developing?
Hi everyone, so I'm joined today by Dean Cannarozzi. Dean has 30 years of experience. You wouldn't believe it to look at him, but 30 years of experience in...
That's because Zoom has filters in it.
The amazing things you can do with technology. 30 years experience in learning and development. He's worked for American International Group, KPMG, Credit Agricole, and currently Sika, where he heads up the global learning and development function. Dean has certifications from MBTI, SHL in situational leadership and coactive coaching, to name just a few. And he describes his strategic approach to L&D as building personalized learning journeys and scaling programs both regionally and locally with a deep focus on the business. Dean will be leading a session at Iventive's Learning Futures London next month, where he'll be, or be this month, probably by the time we get this video out, but in March, where he'll be talking about selling L&D in a talent development focused global HR organization. Dean, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
So great to have you. So it's that theme at Learning Futures London we'll probably want to start with, about selling L&D in a talent development focused organization. So can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing at Sika and the topic that you'll be talking about in your session?
Yes, I mean, I heard you say it's a global function, and it is. However, the way we're structured is I am responsible for the L&D portion. A colleague of mine is responsible for the talent portion of the organization. So essentially, we provide programmatic solutions, which is what our brand really is known by from over the years. So the Sika Business School, I think when people think of the Sika Business School, it's the programs that we support the organization with, and also talent. And the thing is that in our organization, which is a decentralized organization, and basically things go this way, they don't go downwards. The organization is almost programmed for various reasons to view the learning and development as really the talent programs. Okay? Which, I mean, it happens in other organizations as well, but it's based on the language in terms of what we call these programs. Each and every one of these talent programs has the word leadership in them, right? The GMs who exist today, a vast majority of them went through these programs. So when they become GMs, their point of reference is and are the talent programs. And that's what gets lost, I think, in the mix a bit, because the number of people who are looking into talent could be maybe 2% of the population. The question is, what about everybody else? So that's really the issue at hand. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's a theme we've seen come up a lot. I was in Utrecht at the back end of last year, where Nick Van Dam was chairing that event, and he talked about this sort of distinction that we make in talent development between hypos and kind of everyone else. And he said, you know, so what do we call these people? Are they no potentials? Do we have hypos?
No pos, right.
Is that the dichotomy that we're creating in the way that we do this? And people are talking about kind of democratizing talent development and making these programs available for everyone. Is that the kind of direction you see it going in?
Yeah, and you use the word dichotomy, and that nails it, because it is, if you really look at it from the, you know, from a let's use a feet view, 45,000 foot view, you say to yourself, okay, you hear almost every organization say we want to become an employer of choice. So you're competing for the recruiting of talent that comes into an organization, right? And you perhaps offer that we do have learning and development and whatnot. The thing is that, at least in our organization, there's not a real focus on the other 98% of the population. Now, you can't save the world. It's training is a piece of the puzzle. We know that. But it's an important piece, and an employer of choice is an organization that will look at the larger organization holistically. So, I mean, is it realistic to say every single person in an organization will be selected for a training program or something else? No, that's unrealistic by nature. However, the organizations, I believe, that look more holistically at the development of their people, not only through leadership, but in some cases, programmatic solutions are the ones that will be truly employers of choice.
Mhm, mhm. And it sounds like there's a real cultural piece that you need to work with there. You were talking about how leaders have come through these programs, and so that's, they think, well, it worked for me, it must be that must be what will work for everybody else. So I just wonder how important is it that you really engage leaders in this process of trying to broaden out the scope of what you're doing.
Well, I think it's critically important for them. Look, I'm not in a GM role. However, if I were, yes, I'm going to be looking at all the business issues. I've got my KPIs. I've got the pressure from above. However, an organization is only as strong as your people. Everybody knows that. It's the people that drive the business. And I like to look at, the larger organization. Let's say the other, I'm using a number of 98%. That's your middle class. These are the people who hold, it's the glue that holds the organization together. So I would be looking at development of the entire organization. The thing is, again, I think in our organization, their frame of reference, these GMs, for the most part, it's not everyone, of course, but for the most part, and I've seen it for years, are conditioned that what we need to do is fill the succession pipeline. We need to focus on our talents. Again, how do you grow an organization if the masses, the larger portion, are not continuously developing? That's kind of how I view it. So I think it's really important and in their best interest. The challenge is getting to them. We have 100+ countries, 100+ GMs, and and group management that I think, like a lot of organizations, they're divorced to a degree of what happens at ground zero at the local level. I'll just say one other thing. It's a core belief of mine that in general, an organization that's able to take its strategy that's up here, its values and principles that they speak about up here, which are critically important in an organization, the organizations that are able to take that stuff and they're able to make it a reality at the local level, that's a strong organization. Because let's face it, the majority of people in our manufacturing company, the majority of people in sales who are somewhat divorced from corporate in many ways, they're in the field, they're out selling, people perhaps in the factory operations. If you ask them what are the values and principles of the organization, they won't be able to tell you chapter and verse. If you ask them, hey, what is in our organization, we have what's called the leadership commitment, which is our values and principles on how to lead. Do you know what the four are? Majority wouldn't have a clue. And that's not only in our organization, that's in most. So if you're able to take what's happening up here at the highest level and bring it down to the local organization, that's powerful. And learning and development, which I'm responsible for, has the capacity to do that. So back to your question, Richard, about is it important to the GMs, to the leadership? I think it's critically important. It's easy to say, harder to do.
Yeah, and you got onto the question that was going through my head as you were speaking just at the end there, that L&D, it seems like, is in a really strong natural position to form that link between the principles at the top, like you were saying, and the front line, the salespeople, everyone further down in the business who to drive their career development and link that to the overall performance of the business. Do you think L&D is in a unique position there?
I think it's in a very unique position, and I agree with what you said 100%. So I believe that we have the capacity to again link what's up here in the clouds, in the stratosphere, in the exosphere, and bring it down through the organization to the local level. That's when you rock and roll.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And is the sort of infrastructure of learning really important in how you do that? Is having the right tools, the right technologies to be able to make the right learning available to the right people at the right time going to be really important in that?
It is, and we actually do have that infrastructure. I mean, if we're going to talk about platforms, learning platforms, we have an LCMS that we instituted last February, so about a year ago. But then you have the issue of user acceptance. You have the issue of just understanding the technology, because it's a huge change to an organization that is not at this point as sophisticated as perhaps others in the L&D space. So on top of it being a challenge to sell to let's say GMs and to different organizations, on top of it, you put a platform in an organization that's not a tech organization.
Mm.
I mean, if you want to talk about technical capabilities with our organization, we've got some of the best technologies for products and great services. But in terms of us being a tech company, that's not us. And like any other organization today, you hear it everywhere: digital transformation, digital transformation, digital transformation. Yeah. Agreed. But making that happen, again, it's easy to say, making that happen is a different animal. So we struggle with that as well. But we've got, to your point, we've got that infrastructure in place. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah. And does the global nature of the business make that a challenge as well? We see a lot of the time, in the States, it'd be a lot more common for learning and talent to be a lot more closely integrated, perhaps, than they are in Europe. And do you find deploying these kind of cultural changes is difficult across those different territories?
You're asking a question that we'd need 15 minutes to discuss, because there's all kinds of different elements. But to simplify it, of course, it is really a challenge because of language, because of culture. I could argue that, let's say, in the States, and you can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from North America, to be able to promote and successfully execute, let's say, the infrastructure, the systems and whatnot, basically one language. And of course, North America, you're talking Quebec. So, but in Quebec business, you need to obviously speak English and French. So really, it's one language. That makes it a whole lot easier. Of course, you have to have the right people in place to execute. But when you start to get into EMEA, you start to get into Asia Pacific, EMEA is 60 some odd countries. Something's lost in translation. So that complicates it to a large degree. Not impossible, but it makes it harder. I mean, I'm probably speaking to the choir of anybody who observes this this talk, because they're under the same challenges. It makes it tougher for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose thinking about L&D's role in that process and the sort of skill set that we traditionally have as L&D professionals, do you think that sort of ability to engage leaders, the stakeholder management, is that something L&D? Do you think L&D is good at that, or is that something that you think L&D as a whole needs to do better?
If you're asking me if I think I'm good at it, which I don't think that was necessarily the case, I do, but it's one of 100 other initiatives. When you provide quality, let's say, programs and services, which I really do believe we do. Can we get better? Of course, we can always improve. It's just being able to be able to almost capture them, get them in a room and have a conversation. It's just like negotiation, right? The best negotiations are between the two people generally who are the decision makers and have the power to make those decisions. So unfortunately, I can't travel around the planet and meet with 100 different GMs. Yes, I've presented at meetings where the board has been there, the group management has been there, GMs have been there, but there's a diminished amount of return with that because you don't know how much people are connected to it. So to the extent that you can have individual conversations with key GMs, I think that's where you get your headway.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we sort of started off talking about that dichotomy between the hypos and the other 98%, as you put it. Where would this sort of democratization of learning programs and talent development programs leave the talent identification process? Are we still looking for that top 2% in what we're doing? Are we saying we're ditching the 9-box grids, we're ditching the whole process, and we're just going to make it a level playing field for everybody?
So if your question is, are we still focusing today on that 2%? Is that your question?
And in principle, in the future, is it something you think we should still be doing as learning and talent development?
Okay. So the answer, the immediate answer is yes. There still is a focus on that. In fact, we are now launching and we would never use the word mandate because we're not a mandate company, but there is a requirement for every single leader of at least one person or more to go through a feedback process. It's a bit complicated, but it does work quite well. As part of that, there's a moment where you can reach out and to the employee, discuss with him or her skill gaps, and at least from a programmatic solution, you could sign them up to various programs. This is a good thing. It's a great thing. The organization globally hasn't adopted that in the time that I've been there until now. So that gives you some potential to bring some volume in. But it's not enough, in my opinion, because it's not really addressing it throughout the course of the year. So just a long story short is that what I've tried to do is to expand the capacity for people to enroll people, especially line managers, and those are the right people, basically at any point of the year. Example, regional programs for 2024, we had a complete calendar, roughly 50 programs, which is quite a lot, and mainly sales, available in October of last year. So if you saw a skill gap in one of your sales professionals or other employees, and there was a program that matched that, it's free and open for you to enroll them at any time. So that's kind of goes to the scalability and democratization. But the democratization, not by employee, just him or her signing up. It's got to be line manager needs to take a look at skills, capacities, capabilities, and close that gap with the right type programs.
Okay,
so it's a way, Richard, to try to, again, in addition to this annual performance review, to open it up to any point during the course of the year. And in my opinion, any leader worth their role as a leader of people will look on a daily basis as to what do I need to do to get this guy or lady to the next level. That's something that's on someone's mind a lot of the time, because it can only help you if you've got motivated people. And that's the thing about training. Training can be a really big motivator. It's a pat on the back. It's great for networking, but it gives people the opportunity to actually use this and not be on autopilot and show what they've got.
So it sounds like you're really trying to empower the middle managers within your organization.
Absolutely. So that's something we instituted last year through human resources, because we don't want to take them out of the mix. They should be aware at least, but we've given authorization for every line manager to have that discussion with his or her employee at any time, not only at the annual performance review, and determine together whether or not there's a skill gap and what would be the appropriate solution for that. And at that point in time, boom, you can register them, and they will attend a program with their colleagues. And another thing to it is we're talking about many programs that are regional, which integrates people from different cultures, which is a beautiful thing.
Okay, so building that company culture as well, and bringing people together across. That sounds really exciting. And I just wonder, before we finish up, I know you're still fairly early in this process, and we'll be looking for input from the others at Learning Futures London about how you can continue to develop this. But if you were speaking, if someone now was, say a few steps behind you and they're saying, we're really talent focused in our organization, I want to, sell learning as a concept, what advice would you give them about how to get started?
I would probably sound like a broken CD here, but I would say continue to build the talent pipeline. You have to do that. It's not an issue of, oh, they're either paying too much attention to that. I feel sorry for myself. It's not that at all. I endorse 100%. Keep doing that. However, you want to be an employer of choice. I really want to underscore those words. We want to be an employer of choice. An employer of choice considers more than just the 2% people who are viewed, as you mentioned, as hypos. And what's the other word? A no-po or
no
not?
pose.
But
that's Nick Van Dam.
because
I can't claim that one.
I'm sorry.
That's Nick Van Dam's phrase. I can't claim.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Van Dam, right. So the thing is that also with this other population, it's just not a matter of, okay, we have to do it. You do it for the right reasons, skill gaps, motivation, etc. What can happen though is you can, it's like uncovering a rock and finding gold, right, underneath the rock. You can find some precious gems that you are unaware of, not just from a training program, but by motivating and developing them. You might, and it happens quite often, say, wow, this guy or lady's got some skill sets that perhaps I haven't seen before. So there's that possibility as well.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a really empowering message for our learning professionals watching this to get started. And we're really looking forward to hearing more about this when you join us in London in March. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks much.